The courtroom was so still, you could count the ticking of the ancient wall clock suspended high on the distant wall. Each tick sounded louder than the one before, bouncing off the chilly, cream-colored walls and the polished wood benches. The atmosphere itself was heavy, heavy with foreboding. Tasir was brady, the heel foreboding. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, anticipating the day's business to commence. This was going to be a run-of-the-mill hearing. Just another page in the years-long dirty divorce war between Kody Brown and his former wives. Everybody was certain they knew what today was going to be like. They were mistaken. The large double doors at the rear of the room burst open. For an instant, the harsh light from the hall poured in, backlighting someone in the doorway. And then, she entered. Gwen Brown. It was as if the air changed. Heads swiveled with an instant. Whispers spread through the gallery. The sound of cameras was not far behind. The reporters at the back, who had been loungingly making adjustments to their lenses moments before, were snapping pictures in rapid succession. Even the judge, who had been scanning a heap of documents, paused mid-page and leaned forward just a fraction, his eyes squinting with surprise. Gwen hadn't appeared in the courtroom for any of the past hearings. Not at all. And mostly, people thought that she had no desire to be involved with this whole case. For weeks, months really, she'd been quiet, keeping to herself, allowing the elder generation to fight their fights. But today was different. She moved with a measured, almost confrontational gait. Each step of her black boots clicked crisply on the marble floor, ringing out like a drumbeat. She had on a tailored black blazer over a plain cream blouse, her hair tied back in a tidy ponytail. No gaudy jewelry, no heavy makeup, just a crisp, uncluttered presence. But in the tight grip of her right hand, a thin manila folder. That little folder, it felt like it held something of menace within. She swept her gaze around the room, but there was no nervous flicking. She was a woman who knew where she was headed. She wasn't here to observe. She wasn't here to cheer from the sidelines. She was here on a mission. Kody's response was instantaneous. His jaw clenched so hard you could see the muscle in his cheek flex. His back arched, and he shifted awkwardly in his chair at the defense table. He didn't utter a word, but the tension in his body shouted volumes. Next to him, Robyn's knuckles paled as she grasped the table edge. Her mouth folded into a tight line, her eyes fixed on Gwen as if attempting to decipher her thoughts. Yet her face was revealing something. Not confusion, not curiosity, but fear. Christine, sitting on the opposite side with her attorneys, noticed Gwen's entrance and allowed herself the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't an exuberant smile or a tearful greeting, just a quiet acknowledgement. A "you've got this" look that passed between them like a secret message. The murmur within the courtroom was getting more boisterous, and the bailiff, a tall figure with a booming voice, shouted for order immediately. "Ladies and gentlemen, have a seat. No disruptions." The judge, a grizzled man with deep creases etched into his face from years of hard cases, placed his papers down and focused straight on Gwen. His voice was deliberate, but there was a hint of curiosity. "Miss Brown," he spoke slowly, "you are not presently a witness for today's hearing. Do you have anything to add to this case?" The room hung in suspended animation. The only noise was that incessant ticking of the wall clock. Everyone's eyes were on her. Gwen stepped forward, her boots creaking a little louder on the hard floor than they ought to have. She paused at the little wooden fence that stood between the public seating and the attorneys' tables. Her fingers clenched around the folder, its edges slightly bowed under her pressure. She lifted her head, and when she spoke, her words were crisp, firm, weighted with something beyond determination. They were weighted with years of hurt, years of unspoken reality, and the determination of a person who had at last found their breaking point. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied. "I have the truth." It was one word, but it struck like a gavel. Gasps were whispered around the room. Christine's lawyers exchanged a swift look. A reporter in the rear leaned forward so far his notebook nearly fell off his lap. Kody blinked quickly, as if attempting to absorb a catastrophic shock. Robyn's lips parted, but no words emerged. The judge raised an eyebrow and leaned back in his chair. The truth you say? He sounded dubious, but his eyes never wavered from her face. Yes, Gwen said again, her voice firmer now. I've been quiet for too long. I've watched this family destroy itself, and I've heard lies being spoken. Lies that have hurt people I care about. I can't remain still anymore. Not when I know what I know. Kody's attorney jumped to his feet, zipping up his suit jacket. Your Honor, I have to object. This witness has not been sworn in. Her relevance has not been established. The judge raised his hand, cutting him off. Mr. Collins, you'll have your say. But for the moment, I want to know where this is leading. Gwen moved another step forward. Her eyes locked on the judge. I know I'm not on the list. I also know that what I have could change everything you think you know about this case. She raised the folder a little. This is not speculation. This is not gossip. It's on paper, and it's real. Her words hung in the air like the smoke after a firework. Christine's eyes sparkled, and for the first time during this trial, her face held a glimmer of hope. Janelle, across the gallery, folded her arms and leaned forward with her face impassive, but her eyes cutting. Kody could take it no longer. This is absurd, he boomed. And the judge gave him a sharp warning glance. She's my daughter. She's upset over things that occurred years ago. She's here to attack me because Christine initiated it. Gwen's face remained serene, but her tone was glacial. No one initiated me, Dad. I came voluntarily. The term dad fell with an odd heaviness. Not warm, not loving, but laced with disappointment. Robyn found her voice at last. Quavering but quiet. Gwen, please consider what you're doing. But Gwen didn't even glance in her direction. She turned again to the judge and said, if you allow me on the stand, I'll demonstrate to you why they're fighting so vigorously to silence me. A silence descended once more over the courtroom. Even the reporters ceased their writing for a moment, recognizing they were on the precipice of something enormous. The judge regarded her for several long seconds, clicking a pen against his notepad. At last, he spoke. Very well, Miss Brown. Come forward. The court will receive your testimony. Gwen's heart was racing, but she didn't let it betray her. She pushed the tiny gate open, stepped out, and moved toward the witness stand. All eyes were on her. All cameras snapped. And deep inside, everyone in the room knew. Whatever she was going to say, it was going to change everything. The bailiff moved forward, laying a firm hand on the Bible. Please raise your right hand. Gwen's hand shook for an instant, before she recovered. Her voice was firm as she took the oath. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. She lowered herself into the wooden witness chair, the old seat creaking loudly through the quiet courtroom. Her pale manila folder sat on her lap, her fingers tapping lightly against the cover, as if marking time to her pounding heart. The judge pushed his glasses up onto the bridge of his nose. Miss Brown, you have the floor. But be warned, whatever you say will go into the record, and you are sworn in. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Gwen said, her voice firm. Christine's attorney, Miss Avery, stepped forward with a guarded smile. Gwen, thanks for being here today. Let's begin with something easy. Why are you here? Gwen's gaze moved around the room. She glanced at Christine, then Janelle in the gallery, and then Kody. Her face set. I'm here, she stated, because I'm sick of seeing lies pass unchecked. For years I was informed that there wasn't money for some things. No money for school. No money to fix Mom's house. No money to assist my siblings when they needed it the most. And I believed it, until I discovered where the money really went. The words hit like a punch. The gallery burst into whispers, the room crackling with tension. Kody leaned forward to his lawyer, whispering something in a hurry. Robyn glared down at the table, refusing to meet Gwen's eye. Miss Avery nodded slowly. And where did the money go, Gwen? Gwen swallowed hard, her hold on the folder tightening. To private accounts belonging to my father and Robyn, accounts that no one else was aware of. Money from family businesses, joint savings, even the sale of jointly owned property. And it wasn't being saved, it was being spent. Miss Avery cocked her head. Spent on what? On vacations at luxury resorts. On pricey jewelry. on brand new vehicles, on remodeling Robyn's home, when the rest of us were barely scraping by. The courtroom burst open again, voices piling on top of each other in outrage. The judge pounded his gavel. Order! I will have order in my courtroom. After the commotion had subsided, Gwen went on. I kept my mouth shut for a while. I reminded myself that it wasn't my business to interfere. But then I began to gather evidence. Emails, receipts, bank transfers. And once I recognized that this wasn't merely poor money management, but outright concealing of funds from the rest of the family, I knew I needed to say something. Miss Avery pointed to the folder. Is that the evidence you came in today with? Gwen nodded. Yes, and it's just the beginning of what I've discovered. Miss Avery didn't get a chance to ask her next question, because Kody's attorney leapt out of his seat. Objection, Your Honor. This is wholly unsubstantiated and unrelated to what is pertinent in these proceedings. We have no confirmation. The judge stopped him with a raised hand. Mr. Collins, you will be able to cross-examine the witness. But for now, let her talk. Gwen's gaze wandered to Kody. His face was flushed, jaw clenching as if biting words back. Robyn's eyes shone with tears, but her lips were held tightly shut. Miss Avery continued her questioning. Gwen, when did you realize something was amiss? Yes, replied Gwen firmly. 2 years ago, I was trying to get a scholarship and needed financial documents for proof of need. Mom gave me what she could, but it didn't make sense. I'd seen bank statements previously, small sums just enough to pay bills. But now I saw a different account altogether. It contained tens of thousands in deposits. And the withdrawals. Well, they said it all. What's the story? Asked Miss Avery softly. Gwen's eyes hardened. That while Christine, Janelle and their children were living check to check, Dad and Robyn lived like royalty. Gasps erupted once more in the room. A man at the back swore. Unbelievable. Before he was quieted by the bailiff, Gwen went on, her voice growing stronger. I saw payments for designer purses, tuition at private schools for Robyn's children, even though some of my other siblings had to drop out of college because they couldn't pay. And the worst part, some of that money was earned by selling property my mom had a right to, without asking her permission. Christine cast her eyes downward, blinking hard to keep back tears. Miss Avery allowed the silence to linger for a moment, allowing the gravity of Gwen's words to sink in. She then asked, why didn't you speak up earlier? Gwen's shoulders strangled. Because I was afraid. This family. It's complicated. Spreading my mouth means losing relationships, losing being cut off entirely. And I kept hoping things would get better. They didn't, they just worsened. Kody finally lost it. That's because you're hearing lies, he bellowed, slapping his hand down on the table. The judge's gavel crashed down. Mr. Brown, calm down or you'll be taken from this courtroom. Gwen spun around to face him. You know it ain't lies. You just don't want the truth out there. The look between them was charged. Years of unexpressed hurt, distilled into an instant. Miss Avery, feeling the emotional intensity, intervened to maintain the energy. Gwen, what do you wish to see happen because of your testimony? Gwen's tone relaxed a little, but her determination didn't falter. I want the stolen money returned to the people it was taken from. I want my siblings and my mom to be repaid what was due to them. And I want the truth documented, so no one can say this never occurred. The judge leaned forward. Miss Brown, are you stating, under oath, that Kody Brown and Robyn Brown knowingly mismanaged and concealed family funds for personal benefit? Yes, Your Honor, Gwen replied without flinching. That's what I'm stating. The room erupted once more, the noise reverberating off the walls like a wave. The bailiff advanced, prepared to remove anyone who couldn't remain silent. Miss Avery nodded approvingly at Gwen. No further questions at this time, Your Honor. The judge spoke to Kody's attorney. Mr. Collins, you may cross-examine. But he hadn't even started before Robyn spoke for the first time, her voice cracking. Gwen, please, you don't understand. We were trying to protect the family. Gwen's head slowly turned toward her, her words spoken low but cutting. You weren't protecting the family. You were protecting yourself. The words sliced through the room like a blade. Robyn's shoulders crumpled, and Kody's face twisted into something between rage and panic. The judge glanced at the clock. then back to the lawyers. We'll take a 15-minute recess before cross-examining. The gavel fell, and the room burst open again. Journalists pushed towards the door, already on their phones, fingers flying. Christine extended her hand to squeeze Gwen's as she left the stand. Gwen didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply held her folder firmly in hand, realizing this was just the start, and the toughest part lay ahead. The 15-minute break seemed endless. Reporters flooded the corridor of the courtroom, their voices ringing in conflict, as they struggled to yell questions at anyone who moved past them. The atmosphere was heavy, with hearsay. Everyone knew something giant had just burst wide open. Christine and Gwen waited inside the courthouse corridor by a vending machine, Christine's hand lightly on the shoulder of her daughter. "You were amazing in there," Christine whispered, her voice full of pride and concern. Gwen nodded slightly, but her gaze remained on the ground. "I don't feel amazing. I just feel exhausted." Christine squeezed her hand. "The truth is heavy, sweetheart, but you bore it well." A few feet to the side, Janelle floated, staying out of camera range but within calling distance. "If you need someone to back you up in there, you've got it," she said to Gwen, with a nod. At the end of the corridor, Kody was walking back and forth, like an animal trapped in a cage. His attorney was talking to him in hushed, anxious voices, but Cody's body expressed impatience. Robyn was sitting on a nearby bench, her face red and swollen, clutching a crumpled piece of tissue in one hand. Occasionally she would look over at Gwen, but each time Gwen's eyes passed over her as if she were invisible. When the bailiff boomed down the hallway, "Court is back in session," everyone went back to their seats. Tension was even thicker now, like before a summer storm. The judge smoothed his robe and nodded to Cody's attorney. "Mr. Collins, you may cross-examine." Collins stood up, pulled on his jacket, and made his way towards the witness stand, where Gwen had resumed her seat. He smiled, though this type of smile didn't reach the eyes. "Miss Brown," he started suavely, "you've brought these facts for the purpose of justice and truth. But isn't it true you bear grudges against your father and his wife?" "I have complaints about what they've done," Gwen answered calmly. "Naturally," Collins answered, striding slowly. "And would you not say that you've been influenced by your mother, Christine Brown, who's made her opinions about Mr. Brown public knowledge?" Gwen clamped down on her jaw. "My mom didn't make me come here. Actually, she said it could be too difficult. I decided to be here." Collins' brows raised a little. "Interesting. And yet, all of your allegations neatly fall on your mother's side of this controversy. Would you admit that you have any proof, other than your so-called documents, of these claimed fiscal transgressions?" "Yes," Gwen replied without blinking. "My own memory, my own eyes." Collins chuckled. "Memories subject to being manipulated, wouldn't you think?" That was when Kody leaned forward over his chair, his voice piercing the air. "You were manipulated, Gwen. Don't act like you weren't." The judge glared at him warningly. "Mr. Brown." But Kody wasn't hearing it. He was up on his feet now. "You've always hated me because I never gave you what you wanted. This is revenge, not truth." Gasps erupted from the gallery. The bailiff moved forward, but Gwen raised her hand, her voice crisp and even. "This isn't about what I wanted, Dad. This is about what you promised us and didn't deliver. About how you made sure some of us struggled, while others never went without." Cody's face reddened, his voice getting louder. "She seals wick spitting. I'd speak three and verer. Rita tricto." Gwen replied, her voice cold. "You protected yourself, and you protected Robyn. That's all." The room was filled with gasps once more. Robyn's face folded up, tears streaming down freely now. "Gwen, that is not fair," she stated, her voice trembling. "You don't know what kind of pressure we've been under." Gwen interrupted her. "You mean the stress of dwelling in a house that's paid off, and my mother rented out? The stress of purchasing designer handbags, while my other siblings couldn't even purchase textbooks?" The judge brought down his gavel. "Order! I will not stand for yelling in my courtroom." But the harm was already done. The gallery was abuzz, and all the reporters' pens were soaring. Cody's attorney intervened, attempting to take control. "Miss Brown, let us go back to the documents you presented. These might have been acquired unethically, don't you think? Did you break into accounts that didn't belong to you?" Gwen didn't blink. "No, They were given to me by someone who wished the truth to be revealed. And who was that? I'm not giving their name, Gwen asserted. Collins leaned forward, his tone heavy with fake sympathy. So, an anonymous source. How convenient. It's also the only way you know what you know, Gwen retorted. Because someone trusted me to do the right thing with it. Kody slapped his palm on the table once more. This is a circus. The judge's patience was thinning. Mr. Brown, one more outburst and you will be removed from this courtroom. Robyn leaned in close to Kody, whispering something in his ear, but he pulled his arm back violently. His expression was contorted with rage, his breathing labored. Gwen, on the other hand, was as still as stone. Her voice was serene as she replied, "You can scream all you want, Dad. It doesn't change what you did." That one hit like a thunderclap. Even the judge stopped mid-sentence, his pen suspended in the air. Collins slowly took a breath, obviously aware that the cross-examination was not working in his favor. "No further questions at this point, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "We will proceed with examination of the evidence that was submitted." Miss Avery, Christine's attorney stood, holding up a neatly bound packet. "Your Honor, we would like to enter Exhibit B, the bank statements and transfer records submitted by the witness, into the official record." The judge turned to Kody's attorney. "Any objections?" Collins paused, looking at Kody. Kody shook his head, barely perceptibly, but not as a no. Rather like a man who realized suddenly the battle was going out of his control. "No objection," Collins replied at last. The judge took the packet, leafing through the pages at a slow, measured rate. The room was so still now that the rustling of the paper was audible. With some time having passed, he laid down the documents and glanced up. "This court will have a 30-minute recess to study these materials in their entirety. When we return, we will discuss the ramifications of this evidence." He rapped his gavel. "Court is in recess." When the room exploded again, Gwen stepped down from the stand. She didn't glance at Kody. She didn't glance at Robyn. She merely approached Christine, who was standing there with outstretched arms. For the first time all day, Gwen permitted herself a small weary smile. Outside the courthouse building, cameras popped like lightning. But Gwen didn't pause for them. She had done what she needed to do. The rest would come in time enough. The instant Gwen opened the folder, tension in the courtroom changed to electricity. Everyone leaned in, attempting to catch a glimpse of what she was going to disclose. Even fingers of the court reporter hesitated above the keyboard, for a split second, as if they knew this would be a turning point. Within the folder were photocopies of bank statements, land deeds, and most incriminating of all, signed contracts. Gwen set the first paper on the evidence table. Her hands didn't tremble. She'd rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times. "This," she stated, her voice firm, "is the withdrawal of money from my mother's savings account to a front company listed in Robyn's name. The funds were for college tuition. It vanished instead." Gasps emanated through the courtroom. The judge leaned forward, eyes scanning the page, brow furrowed. Kody's face turned deep red. Robyn's lips parted, as if to say something, but words were not forthcoming. Gwen wasn't done. She pushed another set of papers across the table. "And these are records of property. They indicate that land my father had promised to hold in trust for all his children was secretly sold last year." "To whom?" "A company owned by Robyn and a family friend. The sale wasn't made known to the rest of us." The papers were handed to the judge, then the opposing attorney. Christine's lawyer, a statuesque woman with a large presence, rose to the bench. "Your Honor, these papers are in direct conflict with statements given under oath earlier in this trial. Not only do they indicate mismanagement of finances, but willful hiding of assets." Robyn at last found her voice. "That's not true. Those transfers were lawful. Kody consented to them." Gwen's eyes fixed on hers. "Legal? Withdrawing money from my college fund without informing me. Selling land that belonged to us all? You say it's legal, perhaps in your universe, Robyn, but not in mine." The judge banged his gavel for quiet. "Mrs. Brown, you'll get a chance to answer. Meanwhile, we'll take the rest of Miss Brown's evidence." Gwen drew a breath and pulled out one final sheet of paper, this one handwritten yellowed at the edges. "This is a letter from my dad, written to me when I was 16. In it he swore he would always guard your future,
and never allow anyone to steal from you what is rightfully yours. I never thought I'd ever have to use these words in court, but we are here. The letter was read out by the court clerk, and before the last sentence rang out in the room, there wasn't a dry eye among Christine's side of the chamber. Even Janelle, normally calm, wiped away tears with a tissue. The judge leaned back in his chair, obviously shaken but still keeping judicial reserve. Miss Brown, these are serious charges supported by concrete evidence. This court will consider them in full before handing down a verdict. Kody's lawyer attempted to protest, saying the papers were out of context and misleading, but the judge motioned them back. The evidence is admissible. We will continue. At that moment, it was apparent to all reporters, onlookers, even the bailiffs, that Gwen's evidence had altered the dynamics of the trial. What had appeared initially as a messy but routine family disagreement now carried the force of betrayal, evidence, an unassailable fact. And as Gwen exited the witness stand, she did not glance in Kody or Robyn's direction. She only glanced over at Christine, who mouthed one word that contained more thanks than 1,000 of them. Brave. The judge's chambers were quiet for what seemed like an eternity before he again came back to the bench. Every person in the courtroom heard the quiet rustle of his robe as he settled into his chair, his expression inscrutable. Gwen's fingers clutched the rail of the witness stand.
Read.
Christine's fingers tied together in anxiety. Even Kody, who had spent the majority of the trial swaggering about with cocky assurance, now slumped forward, eyes flitting between the judge and his lawyer. Please stand, the bailiff ordered. All rose. The judge cleared his throat, his voice resolute and measured. Having examined all the testimony, the evidence presented, and the records that were discovered, this court determines that Mr. Kody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown committed willful appropriation of joint family funds, hidden assets, and behavior that deprived other family members their rightful share. Gasp after gasp swept around the room. Janelle clapped her hand over her mouth. Christine blinked hard, tears springing up, but they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of relief. Kody went off like a bomb. This is a setup. You can't just. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Brown, one more blow, and you are out of my courtroom. Robyn shook with cold, white with fear, and sat fixed, not able to look anyone in the eye. The force of Gwen's word, the invoices, and the inescapable fact had demolished all the excuses she had concocted. The judge went on. Restitution totaling $430,000 will be granted to Christine Brown and Janelle Brown, jointly. In addition, custody agreements previously contested will be revised in accordance with the court's conclusions regarding financial stability and ethical behavior. The phrase ethical conduct hurt Kody more than any amount of dollars could. Christine leaned over and grasped Gwen's hand gently, giving it a squeeze. You did it, she breathed. Gwen's lip quivered, but she didn't weep. She'd cried enough for a lifetime before today. Reporters outside were already abuzz. The instant the gavel fell for the last time, the courtroom doors opened and a sea of cameras and microphones poured in. Kody elbowed past them, cursing about bias and lies, but his words were lost in the hollered questions. Robyn trailed after, mascara smudged, her hands over her face. Christine and Janelle exited together, Gwen between them. The sun was bright after the gloomy courtroom, but it was warm, nearly salve-like. Gwen, Christine whispered, you didn't just help us, you showed the whole world the truth. Gwen let out a slow breath, the constriction in her chest finally relaxing. I just couldn't let him keep hurting people. Not anymore. Janelle smiled. You're braver than you know. The three women waited on the courthouse steps, reporters swarming around them in a maddening vortex. And for the first time in years, the power had tilted, not through vengeance, but because someone had finally found the courage to speak out. And in that moment, as the cameras flashed and the world listened, Gwen Brown knew that her voice had changed everything.